Hey guys and girls, and welcome back to episode 11 in this series where we are building a GraphQL API with Elixir. So in this episode, what we want to do is generate a new context for our post and our comment model to live in. And then what we're probably going to do is implement the two mutations to add a post to our database, that is a blog post, and add a comment on a post in our database. So let's get started. Let's first make a new Git branch. Git flow feature start. I'm going to call it implement blog context. It's a little bit broad, but that's fine for now. And then we're going to generate a new context. So if you remember what we did with the user context, we are going to type in our terminal mix phoenix.generate.context. This context is going to be called blog. Then we need the model name, which is going to be a post. We need to give it a table name in our database, which is posts. And then we need to define the rows in our table, which is going to be a title. Let's have a look at title content published. So we need a title, which is going to be a string, so we don't need to define that. Title content, which is going to be text. Published, yeah, I spelled that correctly. Published, yes, which is going to be a boolean. And we need a user ID, and we can define that by saying user underscore ID references users, so that a blog post is always going to have a user ID in our database. So let's hit enter, and it generated the files for us. That's great. So if we take a look at our migration, we can see that it's going to create a table posts with a title that's going to be a string, content text. Publish is a boolean, which by default is false and can't be null. I didn't know that did it. Okay. Default false, null false. That's fine. Add user ID references to users table, and on delete, we want to delete. So if a user deletes himself, all the blog posts that belongs to the user are going to be deleted as well. So let's save that. That looks correct. Then we have our blog folder with all the CRUD functionality that got scaffolded out in the blog file, and then the post file is our Ecto schema. So we have a field, and I'm just gonna put this above that, just for me. Title is gonna be a string, content is gonna be a string, published is a boolean, defaults to false, that's fine. And then we have the field user ID is an ID, but what we wanna do, we can actually do something which makes it a lot easier in the rest of the application. We can say the post belongs underscore to, and then we need to define the user and the Ecto schema file of the user, which is user. And we need to import that, so we can alias medium GraphQL API .accounts.user. Now we have access to this. And am I forgetting something? We have all the tables, we have the timestamps. I have the feeling I'm forgetting something, but I don't think so. No, this should be correct. Let's take a look at the change set. It takes in the posts and the stuff that we want to put in the post. We need a title, a content, published, and we also need the user ID. So we're going to add that. User underscore ID with a semicolon in front. Then we need to specify what is going to be required. Title is going to be required, content is going to be required, published is also going to be required, and a user ID as well. We don't want post in our database without a user ID. That doesn't make any sense. And I think that's it for now. All right. So that seems to be correct. Now let's run our migration. So that is mix ecto.migrate and take a look in the database to see if everything, unknown, on delete, value, delete. And I just looked it up, it is on delete, has to be delete all, not delete. That was a little mistake of mine. So let's go into our migration, the post migration, delete all. Okay, let's run the migration again. And now it's working great. So if we open our database, we should have a new schema. There we go, we have an ID, a title, content, published, user ID, insert at and updated at. And if you look at the structure, we can see that the user ID points to the user table, which is a foreign key. That is good. Okay. Let's close that. So now that we have everything set up, we can actually implement the mutation. So let's go to our schema file and add a new mutation. So we'll register a user, log in a user, we're gonna add a new one, we're gonna add a description. We're gonna call it create a post with the fields add underscore post. The type is going to be a post underscore type, which we have to make. Then we know that we need arguments, which is going to be input, non-null, and we're going to call it post underscore input underscore type. And then we're going to point to a resolver, which we have to make, resolve, and that is going to be resolvers dot post resolver dot create post with 3 arguments. And I think I'm going to call the field to be consistent create post as well. Okay, now we have the mutation, we need to implement the types, because we're referencing a post type and a post input types, which we don't have yet. So let's go into our schema folder, to our types. And for now, we're gonna import the types, the post type. And we're going to add a new file, which is going to be post underscore type.ex. Then I'm going to copy this and modify it in our post type. So this is going to be not a user type, but a post type. Object is going to be a post type and a post input type, which is going to have an ID. So remember, the type here is what we're going to return whenever a post gets made. So what do we want to get back? We want to get back the ID. We want to get back the title. We want to get back the content. We want to get back published, which is going to be a Boolean, and I think this is how you define that. And we need to make sure that it has a user, which we'll do in a second. Then the input object of the post type is going to be a title, non-null string, a content field, non-null string, published non-null boolean, and that is it. You might think, okay, but if we make a post, we also need a user ID, but because we have the user in our context, we don't need to define it here. We can just look it up in our context whenever the resolver gets hit. So we can delete that. And then if we look at our mix file, we actually got the package Absinthe Ecto, which makes it really easy to associate a post type with a user type. So what we can do here is, at the top of the file, we're going to import the module. So we can say absinthe.ecto, and it requires you to specify the repo, and our repo is medium GraphQL API.repo. And what we can do now is we can say that a post type also has a field of a user, the user that created the post, which is a user type. And we can resolve that by just saying associate the user. So we don't need to make a new resolver that tries to combine them together. We can just do it like this. Okay, so now we have the type. Let's see, am I forgetting something? We made a post type, we imported it into our schema types, which is going to be imported into our schema. And we have the create post mutation. So I think everything should work now. Let's try and run the server. We might run into an error. Let's have a look. There we go. Variable user type does not exist and is being expanded to user type. Why is that? Let's have a look. Notation, post type, user type. Okay, so I see that I made a little mistake here. It's not going to be post type with a lowercase t, but with a uppercase. Then bool is not valid because I think if we run it right now, it's going to complain about something else. Oh, this has to be a atom. Never mind. Okay, let's run the server again. Yeah. So bool is not defined in your schema. Yeah, it's not bool, it's boolean. Silly mistake. There we go. So if we run the server now, we should probably get an error. Yeah, we don't have a resolver yet, but if we go to our schema, the mutation should be there. If we look at the docs, we have a mutation, a create post mutation with a post input type, content published title, and it returns a post type. And we can see that there's a user, which is a user type, because of the Absinthe Ecto package and the way we specified this field. Okay, so now we need to make a resolver for this post type. So let's go to our schema. And we're going to create a post. And we can actually implement our middleware here that we created in the last one, which is, let's copy that. So if we register a user or log in a user, we don't need any validation. We don't care. But if we create a post, we actually, and we can put it under the arguments, middleware authorize any. So any user that is logged in can make a post. And now we need to make the create post resolver. So if we go into our resolvers, let's make a new file. Post underscore resolver.ex. And let's just copy one module so that we don't forget anything. This is going to be the post resolver. And we are going to alias not accounts, but we're going to alias block. And we called it create post, so we need to make a function in our post resolver that is going to be create post. it expects input. Input, which we bind to input. And we need the context. And what we need out of the context is the current underscore user, which we're going to bind to current underscore user. So we can run it now. We can have a look at the current user, and we can also IO that inspect the inputs, and then we're going to do something with it. But let's just see what happens when we try to create a post now. Mutation, which is going to be create post. It expects input, which we defined. It expects a title. Hello world. Then we need contents. Let's just type in a few markup words. There we go. And it expects published, which we gonna define as true. And what do we want to return? We want to return the ID, title, content, and now we can specify, okay, we also want to look up who the user is that created it. So we need the ID, well, we don't need it, but let's have a look. First name and last name. And if we run it, we're going to get an error, but we can look in our terminal. What is in the inspects? So the first one is the input, and we can see that the input has a content, published, and title. And the second one is the current user. And we can see that it is a user with all the user credentials. So what we want to do now is, because if we take a look at our post, what does our post expect when it gets created? It expects a title, content, published, and a user ID. So we need to combine this map with the current user.id, which is 2. So in here, we're going to say, we can say post underscore input is going to be map.merge. What map.merge does, it merges two, well, exactly what it says. It merges two maps together. So we have a input map. And what else do we want to have in a new map? We want the current user. So we can say, okay, we want in that input map the user ID, which is going to be out of the context, the current user dot ID. So if we take a look at the post input now, we should have a map with all the input and a user ID. So I'm going to run this again. Take a look in the console. We should have the input, the current user out of the context, and now we have a map with the content, published, title, and the user ID, which is exactly what we want. So let's get rid of the 2 IO inspects above here. And what we want to do then is create the post, and we already have a function for that, which is block.createPost, which takes in the post input. If we take a look at the create post, takes in the attributes in a change set and inserts it into our database. So let's see what happens if we run it now. We get back the post that is created with the title, the ID, and the content, and we get back the user that created the post, which is Bob, because we still have the token of Bob in our header. So let's have a look in the database. And there we go, we have our first post. Great, and we can see that the user ID is 2, and if we click on that, how do you do that again here? Yeah, there we go. We can see that it points to Bob, which is the user. Awesome. Okay. Let's get out of there. So now that we have to create post mutation, we want to make the create comment mutation. So let's clear the terminal, and we're going to say mix phoenix.gen.context. We're going to point to the same context, which is the block, because in that block context, we're going to have the comment model. We're going to make a comments table, and the comments are, what does a comment have? It has an ID, which is by default. It has content, a user ID, and a post ID. So we need to reference the user and we need to reference the post. So we can say content, which is text. Then we need to have a user underscore ID, which references user. Or is it users? No, it references a user. And then we need a post ID, which references a post. And I think that is correct. So let's run that. It did run, great. So if we take a look at the repo, and this always happens. Okay, I need to reopen my Visual Studio Code. And now I should have the repo. Yeah, there we go. The migration. The comment, yeah. We have content, which is text. User ID references user on delete. So if we delete if a user gets deleted, which has comments, we want to delete all. Is that what it was? Let's have a look at the post. Yeah, delete all. And if a post gets deleted, we want to delete all the comments of that post as well. So that's great. Okay, so this is fine now. So let's go back to our schema, and we're gonna just copy this, and we're gonna work our way backwards again. So this shouldn't be create a post, but create a comment. Create comment. Type is a comment type. Arguments is going to be input, null is going to be a comment input type. We are going to leave the middleware in there. We don't care about the role, so anyone can make a comment as long as he's logged in. We're going to resolve to the, I'm going to point to the comment resolver, and we're going to say create comment. Let's go to our types. I'm going to make a new type, which we're going to import in our index type file, which is going to be a comment type. Then we need to make a new file. Comments underscore type.ex. Let's copy this. Let's change this to comment. We need our Absinthe schema notation. We also are going to use the Absinthe Ecto module because a comment belongs to a user and belongs to a post. The object is going to be a comment type. We have a field ID, that's fine. We don't have a title. We have content, which is going to be a string. Published, we don't care about. We do have a field user because a comment has a user, which is going to resolve to the user. And we also are going to do the same, but then we're going to say post type, and association is post. The input object is a field with content, and a field with a post ID, because we need to know which post the user is going to comment on. We're going to say it's non-null and it's going to be an ID type. Okay. That seems to be correct. And I think that we forgot something. Yeah. In our comment model, we have the field content, which is a string. That's correct. But in here, a comment, we can just copy this. A comment belongs to a user. And because we're using the user, we need to alias it. So alias medium GraphQL API .accounts.user. And it also, a comment belongs to post. And we need to alias that up here as well. So alias medium GraphQL API post blog post. There we go. Now we can get rid of these two. What are we going to cast in the change set? Well, we're going to cast the comment, the content. We're also going to cast the user underscore ID. And remember, it's an atom. And a post underscore ID. And remember, it's going to be an atom. Validate required is exactly the same. We also need these two. And I think that is it. Well, let's have a look. Let's run the server. Mix phoenix.server. And of course, we have a problem. Let's see. Invalid scheme. We have a problem. Input comment input type is not defined in your schema. Let's have a look at our schema. If we create a comment, we have a comment input type. In our types, we have a comment type that we import. If we go in there, schema types, comment type. We have a comment type and we have a, there we go, we have a comment comment input type. We forgot to change that. Let's run the server again. Now we don't have a resolver yet. That is correct. So let's go into our resolver folder. Make a new file. Call it comments underscore resolver .ex. Copy that because it's going to be pretty much the same. It's not going to be a post resolver, but a comment resolver. Okay, and then we're going to say create comment, which expects input, and we need a current user. So we're going to say, okay, map merge the input with the user ID that we take out of the context, and then we're going to say blog.createPost, but now we're going to say create comment, and let's change that to comment as well. So let's see if this works now. Let's restart our server. And let's have a look at our database. We just have one comment, one post at the moment, and we didn't run our migration yet. So let's do that first. Mix ecto.migrate, which is going to make our database table. And I think relation user does not exist. That's strange. Schema. No. Repo. Migrations. Comment. References users. References posts. Is that what's? Has to be plural. There we go. Let's have a look now. Refresh it, and there we have the comments with the post ID and the user ID. That's great. Mix phoenix.server. And we only have one post that we can comment on with the ID of 1. So if we go into our endpoint and say mutation. We want to run the create comment mutation, which expects inputs, which is a map that has content, create post. It has a post ID, which is 1, because that's the only post we have at the moment. In the future, we're going to validate that. And what else does it have? Nothing, that's it. Yeah. So then we can say, okay, we want to get back the ID, the content. We can now say, okay, we also want the posts that we're commenting on, because we associated them with the title. And we can also get back the user that created the comment, which is Bob in our case. So let's run this. And we see that the comment got created. So we can now create posts and we can comment on the posts. And if we look in our database, it should be there. Refresh it. There we go. It has the user ID of 2, which is Bob. And it has the post of 1. It's great. So everything is working. All right, that's it for now. So we did quite a lot of work. We implemented a new context. The blog context, we made 2 new models, the post and the blog model. The post and the comment model. We implemented the resolvers, the types, put them in our schema. So as you can see, if you set your GraphQL layer, if you set it up, it's quite easy to actually implement all the other functionality. So for now, let's kill the server and commit everything. All right, everything is committed. Not the best commit messages, but let's finish the branch create flow feature, finish, and git push origin develop. So now it's on GitHub. Okay, so in the next episode, what we're probably going to do is we want to query the data that we create. So we want to query the posts and comments, and we want to paginate them so that we don't get, for example, all the comments on a post, which could be 100, 200, but we want to just get 20, and then if a user clicks next, we want to get the next 20. Same goes for the posts. So I think that's what we're going to do in the next episode. Or we might implement the error messages, because we haven't touched error messages yet, because it's something I don't really like implementing, but we have to do it. So we probably do that or do the queries. So thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next episodes.